Imagine being the second most populous country in Africa, a nation of 130 million people with the fastest growing economy in the region. You manufacture goods, you grow food, you want to trade. But there is one problem. You are a prisoner in your own home. To sell anything to the world or buy anything from it, you have to knock on your neighbor's door and beg to use their bathroom. That is the reality for Ethiopia today. It is the largest landlocked country in the world by population. But here's the kicker. It wasn't always like this. For most of its history, Ethiopia was a maritime power. It had beaches, it had a navy, it had the Red Sea. So, what happened? How did a nation with 3,000 years of history wake up one morning to find that they couldn't see the ocean anymore? And more importantly, right now, in 2026, is their new prime minister willing to start a war to get it back? This is the story of Ethiopia's prison wall and the fight to tear it down. To understand the pain of losing the sea, you have to understand how long Ethiopia had it. We are going way back to the 1st century AD. This was the kingdom of Axum. It was one of the 4 great powers of the ancient world, right next to Rome, Persia, and China. Why? Not because of their mountains, but because of the water. Axum controlled the port of Assab, right there on the Red Sea coast. This was the gateway for ivory, spices, and gold flowing into the Roman Empire. For over 800 years, the sea was Ethiopia's highway to riches. Fast forward through the centuries. The power shifts inland to the mountains of Shiwa, but the dream of the coast never dies. In the late 1800s, Emperor Menelik II, the man who defeated the Italians at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, was a warrior king. But while he was crushing the Italian army on land, he lost the coast. The Italians, even though they lost the battle, kept the beaches. They created the colony of Eritrea, stealing Ethiopia's shoreline right under their noses. For a while, it was okay. The Italians built ports like Assab and Massawa, and Ethiopia still used them. They had a deal. The Italians held the coast, the Ethiopians held the highlands. But after World War II, the Italians were kicked out, and in 1952, the United Nations did something interesting. They gave Eritrea to Ethiopia as part of a federation.
By 51 votes in favor, none against, and 5 abstentions. My congratulations to His Imperial Majesty, the Emperor of Ethiopia, and to the 2 peoples of Eritrea and Ethiopia, now joined together in a federation under the Ethiopian crown.
Emperor Haile Selassie must have been thrilled. Ethiopia finally got its coastline back. They built a navy. They had their own fleet. For a decade, it was a happy marriage. But Haile Selassie got greedy. In 1962, he dissolved the federation and just annexed Eritrea. He made it a province. Big mistake. By absorbing Eritrea by force, Haile Selassie lit a match that would burn for 30 years. The Eritreans didn't want to be a province. They wanted their own country. The war for independence began. Then came the communist Derg regime, the infamous Red Terror, and they inherited this nightmare. They tried to crush the Eritrean rebels with Soviet tanks and hunger. It didn't work. The war dragged on for decades, bleeding Ethiopia dry. And then, in 1991, everything flipped. 2 rebel groups fighting the same government finally won. In Addis Ababa, the EPRDF, led by a man named Meles Zenawi, took power. In Asmara, the EPLF, led by Isaias Afwerki, took control of Eritrea. They were allies, they were friends. The Cold War was over, and the world wanted clean borders. The United States swooped in, led by President Jimmy Carter, to broker a deal. In 1993, a referendum was held. The Eritrean people voted overwhelmingly to break away. Ethiopia, under Meles Zenawi, agreed. They said, "Go in peace." But here is the detail that keeps Ethiopians awake at night. When Eritrea walked away with independence, they didn't just take the land, they took the entire coastline. They took Ethiopia's navy, they took the port of Assab, and Meles Zenawi let them. Was it a mistake? Or was it a betrayal? Many Ethiopians today believe their leaders were naive. They trusted their friends too much. Overnight, 120 million people became prisoners of the mountains, left with just one tiny lifeline, the port of Djibouti. Ethiopia went from an empire with a navy to a landlocked country that had to rent space from its neighbors. You might think losing the sea is bad enough, but it gets worse. The brotherly love between Ethiopia and Eritrea lasted about 5 years. In 1998, they went to war. Over what? A dusty, worthless patch of land called Badme. It was one of the most brutal wars of the modern era. Trenches, human wave attacks. 100,000 people died over a town that looks like the surface of the moon. The war ended in 2000 with the Algiers Agreement. An international court ruled that Badme belonged to Eritrea. Ethiopia, angry and proud, refused to move. They entered a state of no war, no peace for nearly 2 decades. For those 20 years, Ethiopia's situation got desperate. Remember, they have no sea access. 95% of their trade goes through Djibouti. They are paying billions of dollars in port fees to a country the size of a postage stamp. They are totally dependent. It's a chokehold. But the sea was still a dream until 2018. In 2018, a new leader came to power in Ethiopia. His name was Abiy Ahmed. He was young, charismatic, and he promised to open the prison door. In a historic move, he walked across the border into Eritrea, hugged his enemy, Isaias Afwerki, and declared the war over. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for it. For a moment, Ethiopia celebrated. They thought, finally, the Port of Assab will open. We can trade freely. They even started repairing the road to the coast. But here is the twist. The hugs and handshakes didn't last. Eritrea's president, Isaias Afwerki, is a survivor. He's been in power since 1993. He doesn't want Ethiopia, a giant of 120 million people, to be strong. He prefers his neighbor weak and dependent. By 2020, the love affair was over. When war broke out in Ethiopia's Tigray region, Eritrea sent troops into Ethiopia, not as friends, but as avengers, burning villages and slaughtering civilians. The Nobel Peace Prize moment was dead. And Abiy Ahmed realized, if he won't give me the port willingly, I have to find another way. Abiy started looking elsewhere. In 2024, he shocked the world. He signed a deal with a breakaway region called Somaliland. In exchange for a naval base and commercial access to the port of Berbera, Ethiopia agreed to consider recognizing Somaliland as an independent country. This was a bombshell. Somalia, which considers Somaliland part of its territory, nearly declared war. Egypt and Eritrea, both rivals of Ethiopia, rushed to sign defense pacts with Somalia. The region is now a powder keg. In late 2024, cooler heads prevailed. Turkey stepped in and brokered the Ankara Declaration. Ethiopia and Somalia agreed to talk. They held meetings in early 2025. But the core issue remains. Ethiopia needs salt water, and its neighbors are afraid to give it. So, where are we today? It is February 2026, and the tension is higher than it has been in years. Just days ago, Ethiopia sent a formal letter to Eritrea. In it, Ethiopia accused Eritrea of sending troops across the border into Ethiopian territory, specifically into the Tigray region. They are demanding that Eritrea pull those troops out. But listen to the language of the letter. Ethiopia didn't just say, "get out." They said they are ready to negotiate maritime affairs and access to the sea through the Port of Assab. Ethiopia is essentially holding up a sign that says, "Give us Assab or we have a problem." Eritrea responded by calling the accusations false and fabricated. And here is the scariest part. Analysts are watching Eritrea mobilize troops. They are calling up reservists. Egypt, Ethiopia's rival over the Nile River Dam, is cozying up to Eritrea and Somalia. It is forming an alliance to contain Ethiopia. Abiy Ahmed says he wants peace. He says, "We don't want war, but we cannot be landlocked forever." He is asking Russia, China, and the US to mediate, but he is also building the biggest army in the region. Ethiopia has a saying, "Ethiopia is a country with a historical boundary in the sea." It is written in their old constitutions. For the young people of Ethiopia, born after 1993, they have never seen their flag fly over a naval ship. They have never had a beach. Prime Minister Abiy calls this the generational mandate. He has staked his legacy on it. But the question remains, can he get the sea back without drowning the region in another war? The Horn of Africa is a tinderbox. You have Egypt, angry about the Nile. You have Eritrea, paranoid and militarized. You have Somalia, fighting for its own unity. And in the middle, you have 120 million Ethiopians who are tired of being renters in their own neighborhood. History took their coastline away in the 1990s. Now they want it back. The question is, will the world give it to them peacefully? Or will the waves of the Red Sea turn red once again? Thanks for watching. If you want part 2 on the Nile dispute or the war in Tigray, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments. Do you think Ethiopia has a right to the sea? Or should borders stay as they are? I'll see you in the next video.